Hello and welcome. Very good evening. You're watching the Sunday edition of the Urban Debate. I am Afrida Rahman Ali. We begin with our focus today on two states, Kerala and Maharashtra, as the country is registering a very positive response when it comes to COVID control, with a healthy and in fact with an encouraging results when it comes to issues like positivity rate. These two states still, just by the sheer number of cases, of active cases, are very high on the list in terms of the worst affected states. By far, the highest, in fact, in Kerala and Maharashtra, when we look at the active cases, Kerala, the last 24 hours has registered over 60,000 cases. Maharashtra has registered over 30,000 cases. And note this, the state after that in the third place is Karnataka, which has only got about 6,000. So Kerala and Maharashtra has, as of now, a very high number of active cases compared to the rest of India. Our focus would be to take a look at these two states and see where have they faltered, what exactly has gone wrong, is the strategy that the government is using somewhere misplaced, what can the states do and what can the center do in this respect. Because remember, states like Uttar Pradesh and Delhi has controlled the spread and brought down fatalities. They also have the same issues of density of population, etc. So we are going to then address this issue of whether unlocking has hurt some states more than the other, whether opening out theatres, public transport, local trains in the case of Mumbai was a bad idea after all. And also, poll-bound state Kerala, where election fever has already gripped the state, there are massive public rallies organized. How is the state going to grapple with the numbers that are being registered there? Will stricter enforcement work? Or do we need more COVID discipline? Is the onus on citizens? Or do we need more lockdowns for certain zones and certain areas? Let me introduce my guest this evening, Dr. Shashank Joshi, Dean of the Indian College of Physicians from Lilavati Hospital and also member of the COVID-19 Task Force in Maharashtra. Dr. Padmanabha Shenoy joining us from Kochi, is an immunologist, and Dr. Raman Gangakhetkar, former head of epidemiology and communicable diseases of the ICMR. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Urban Debate on this conversation this evening. I want to first, in fact, go across to Dr. Shashank Joshi. We are looking at Maharashtra very closely. Simply for the reason that when we look at, cursory look at the figures, Dr. Joshi tells us that since the local trains have opened, there has been an increase in the daily number of cases. It may not be a very substantial increase, but nevertheless, there is an increase. Now, it seems that the medical community in Maharashtra, at least, is divided on this. I mean, not all of them are willing to attribute the surge in cases to opening of local trains. Where do you stand on this, Dr. Joshi?
So, let us look at facts. Before the unlocking of the trains, 20 lakh people and commuters were there in the local trains. And after that, the number has gone up to 32 lakhs. So there is a 12 lakh increase. And the number of cases reported in Mumbai when there were 20 lakh commuters going was hovering between 400 and 350. That was the number, which has gone up to 500 and above, which is a jump of 100 in the last 5 to 6 days.
Yes.
In fact, today's number is 645 to be precise. Now, is it related to those 12 lakh commuters which are in the trains again? Is it related to unlocking and opening up of schools and colleges? Is it related to a generalized complete unlocking? If you ask me, we really don't have direct answers on that. But my feeling is that even if it is linked, there is a total lack of respect for COVID inappropriate behavior. But you may say that that is a generalized phenomenon across the country. But I still feel that we need to be alert. And I think it's a little premature to say, it's a little premature to attribute it to directly the locals, because my feeling is people who are traveling in the locals and buses probably have some degree of exposure to the virus already. And it is actually, if you see the type of people who are now coming with COVID, are the non-exposed group, which is the middle class group and a little upper middle class group, which has started trickling in. So we are seeing a trickle. We are definitely had a thicker tail. Mumbai had a thick tail for a very long time. And that tail had started waning out probably a month back. But again, we are seeing that tail getting thick. So is it endemic in Mumbai? Is COVID going to stay? If you ask me, with migration, with population density, and remember, Mumbai cannot be compared to Delhi or Uttar Pradesh because the population density per square meter and the poor ventilated spaces and overcrowding is far more because of the sheer population density in Mumbai compared to rest of India. So that part, I think I would not agree with you a little bit. But I completely agree with you that we need to be absolutely on red alert and we need to not be complacent. The other possibilities are we looking at some variants of mutants. We don't know. We have to do much more genomic sampling. And that's something as of now, it's a caution, but it's a yellow signal. Whether that yellow will become red, if you ask me, the next 2 weeks will tell.
Okay, right. And the concern also, Dr. Joshi, is because when we look at issues of public transport, these are enclosed spaces with large number of footfall. We know how people are packed like sardines in the local trains in Mumbai. So that looks like, for something like COVID, which is transmitted human to human, it obviously looks like a recipe for disaster. How would you have these local trains open out? And if you don't open the local trains out, how will a city like Mumbai, which is literally the nerve center, the financial hub of the country, get started again? I mean, there are so many other factors that are also connected and to a city like Mumbai for businesses and for economy. I want to go across now to Dr. Shenoy, but before that, I want to quickly just listen into what the Chief Minister of Kerala had to say when he was questioned on issues of transmission rate, on issues of why the RT-PCR tests are not done enough, so detection is poor in the state of Kerala. Let's quickly listen into the Chief Minister, who now assures that all these issues are being handled, but then the cases are still very high. Let's listen in.
കോവിഡ് ചികിത്സയിലുണ്ടായിരുന്നത് ജനുവരി 24 അന്ന് 72,891 പേരാണ് ചികിത്സയിലുണ്ടായിരുന്നത്. അതിൽ നിന്നും രോഗികളുടെ എണ്ണം ഫെബ്രുവരി 7 ആയപ്പോഴേക്കും 67,650 കുറഞ്ഞു. അതിൽ RT-PCR ടെസ്റ്റ് 75% ഉയർത്താനും ആവശ്യമായ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ ഓരോ ജില്ലയിലും പുരോഗമിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
All right. So, when we look at the state of Kerala again, like Dr. Joshi was saying, there are some individual compulsions of peculiar to that state. Kerala also has certain compulsions. It is a state where, like the Chief Minister keeps saying, there are a lot of imports. Not all the cases who are detected and test positive are from Kerala per se. There are a lot of visitors. The second issue also with the state of Kerala is that much of the state apparently is in the urban sphere. There isn't much of a rural area that is affected in Kerala, and the schools have posed a real big issue in the state of Kerala. Now, in this respect, I want to ask you, Dr. Shenoy, why do you think Kerala is trailing in the fight against COVID? It was a state that made news for the way it controlled the number of cases in the very beginning, but now we see that the cases are particularly high in Kerala compared to rest of India.
Yeah. Precisely, one of the first points you have already told, Kerala is much more urbanized, unlike Uttar Pradesh or Bihar, which have a lot of rural space. So Kerala mobility between the cities are very high, and Kerala is like a big city. So people move from one place to another, and interactions are very high. So that is first and foremost point. But more important point than that is, if you look at the recent Zero survey, Kerala has only 11.5% of the population affected till date. When in most of the other urban cities, around 35 to 40%, in Mumbai or Delhi, in some parts of Delhi, it is 70%. If 70% is infected, the susceptible population is 25 to 30%. So in Kerala, it is around 85 to 90% people are still susceptible because zero prevalence is very, very low. What does it indicate? During the ancient pandemic phase, during the lockdown, it was very strict and the virus could not infect most of the people. So it was limited to very, very few numbers. So 11% are only infected now, means 90% people are susceptible. And what has happened, most of the other parts have opened up with a zero prevalence of 60% or 70%. With 11%, yes. Kerala is having almost unlocking similar to other places. So what is happening is virus is having a free run. That has resulted in these high numbers. Definitely PCR numbers are a matter of concern because numbers have not increased till. Now also the numbers are 15 to 20,000 PCR tests only. Although the tests are 75 to 80,000, predominantly they are antigen. Government is trying to step it up, but stepping up PCR numbers is not easy. You need to have large number of infrastructure, training, etc., which cannot be done overnight.
Okay. Right. But, a quick look at the figures. Like I keep saying, here is the story. What we are actually looking at, viewers, is the fact that the numbers that you have from these two states, if I can just quickly point out, for Kerala, it's 63,577, Maharashtra 33,269 active cases in the last, that was last recorded on 13th February 2021. And the other states are around 5,000. So if you really look at the quantum of the number of cases, it's almost, more than 5 to 6 times in these two states compared to other states. So therein lies the problem. And I want to also now bring in Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar. Dr. Gangakhedkar, of course, comparison with Delhi and Uttar Pradesh may not be fair on all accounts, but how do we strike a balance given the individual compulsions? Say, for instance, if we take the case of Mumbai, do you agree with Dr. Joshi when he says that yes, these can be potentially hotspots given the fact that they are enclosed spaces, but we have not come to a conclusion as to what you can attribute it to? The sheer high number of active cases in Maharashtra, Dr. Gangakhedkar.
I would agree partially with what Dr. Shashank Joshi tried to communicate. There are a few things which I would just say. You look at the picture of Maharashtra. Maharashtra presents an entirely unique kind of circumstances in different parts of the state as such. You look at Bombay, you will find Thane city, Thane area has far higher likelihood that emergency is likely to occur compared to Bombay. Now, if you try to just associate that with locals, you don't see any reason because Thane is part of the local network itself. So what does it essentially tell you? It tells you one thing, that perhaps the COVID-related guards are dropping down, and at the same time, opening of school as a decision needs to be reviewed. Now, you look at the other part of Maharashtra, which is far more worrisome to my mind. You look at Pune. Pune doesn't have local, but it's just the opening of educational institutions which is an issue. And what is more worrisome is I don't understand why Vidarbha, one of the regions of Maharashtra, you look at Amravati, you look at Buldhana, you look at Wardha, you look at Nagpur, all those 4 districts are presenting a picture which is suggestive of another wave coming in that small geography as such. But as we keep on saying that most often what you are going to see is heterogeneity in the curves in different areas. But it is suggesting one feature, that since the population density also tends to vary a lot, if you compare Vidarbha with the Western Maharashtra zone, you would perhaps think that perhaps it has something to do with opening of schools. Now, how could you establish the fact? Perhaps you just need to look at what is the kind of age distribution that tends to exist today and what was it before. Perhaps it will tell you answers about these questions and you could get away with it. And I agree fully with him. The infection is going to become endemic because if the younger population, the adolescents are going to get infection, they will have higher mobility, they will transmit to their own family members, and they will be asymptomatic. So even that potential of that age group to become super spreaders for infection would continue to exist.
Right. Like let's talk solutions now then, because you rightly highlighted the issue of schools, which I also wanted to talk about, and I want to bring all 3 of you into this about say for instance in Maharashtra, you rightly pointed out Amravati and Nagpur are worst affected among all the districts. The positivity rate in these 2 districts have gone up, and they have started imposing restrictions again in gatherings and also postponed reopening of schools. Now, what do you suggest, Dr. Joshi, is the best way forward? Should the onus be on citizens? There should be greater COVID discipline. We should not lower our guard because there is something called a response fatigue also that has set in with COVID. And people have started being complacent. Now, how do we arrest a tendency like that? It's a human tendency. On the other hand, can you really have schools for a prolonged period closed, even for the next academic year in the worst affected states? What would be the ideal way forward from here on? Should government impose more lockdowns? Or should the citizens now start, also taking big responsibility for this?
I think, as Dr. Ganga Khadkar said, these are heterogeneous spots. And I think in each hotspot, a local decision has to be taken by the local governing bodies. And clearly, if there are hotspots which are occurring in pockets like Nandurbar, Nanded, or places like Varda, places like Amravati, obviously we will need to do a short locking of schools maybe, or some curtailment on some measures at a loco-regional level for a short duration. That's a given. And I think that has to be done. The second thing one has to be mindful of, and you are very, very right, that people have got fatigued out. But 2021 is a year of masking. I don't think there is any deviation from masking. And unfortunately, masking is somewhere we have faltered. In fact, we have seen in the US, they have advocated double masking. I don't think it hurts to mask. And therefore, your responsibility as a citizen is absolutely at its peak. Though I understand fatigue has set in everywhere. And we have to open. But if we are headed for a lockdown, which we can never afford, and if we do not want a Europe or United Kingdom or a US on us, we have to buckle up and take guard. In fact, a central team had come down to Kerala and Maharashtra.
Yes.
They addressed all these issues at length. We had intensive dialogue. And what is imperative, a part of that is IEC, Information, Education and Counseling of people at large, because a behavioral change is mandatory. At the same time, the testing, tracing, tracking cannot be off late. What is happening right now is all the testing had gone away from community and it was all restricted only to hospital setups. And that also has to move back to the community. Most people were asymptomatic. They were silent spreaders like what Dr. Ganga Khedkar was mentioning. And we need to be on our vigil. We will have to be on our vigil in 2021. We can't afford to lax.
Absolutely. We have to draw lessons from this. Yes, these two states, in fact, must actually now, become examples in the sense that we should draw lessons from this and then let our guards go up rather than go down. I want to go across to Dr. Shenoy. That, the point about schools in Kerala particularly is relevant. Just today's report, Dr. Shenoy, that 180 students and teachers have tested positive from Marancheri and Vaneri government schools. So like we were discussing the heterogeneous spots in Kerala particularly, and IMA has written to the Kerala Chief Minister saying, please, ensure that the schools remain closed. The other issue is it's a poll-bound state. And BJP is going to launch massive poll campaigns apparently from 20th onwards already. Election fever is at its peak, and there are large gatherings happening even as we speak.
Totally agree with you. One of the major reasons why Kerala seeing its spike is end of December, Kerala had local body elections. Following the local body election, there were massive celebrations by all the political parties, which has led to a huge spike, which is refusing to come down and is still staying high. So definitely next election in April. April is the election time most probably. So it is going to see another huge spike. Already election rallies are going breadth and length of Kerala for all the parties, which is going to be dangerous. That masks are not being used. Everybody is trying to show their strength, which is a very, very dangerous strength. Those who have to show as a role model to the community are violating the rules. They are not, political leaders are not wearing masks properly. There's a huge gathering. Today also there was a huge gathering. So this has to be curtailed and there has to be role model. But another very, very important thing, Shashank sir also has already told, whether there's a mutant strain circulating in different parts of Kerala. We need to have genetic testing, genetic random sampling of genetic samples has to be done and reports has to be released, and we need to study that whether there's a mutant virus which is circulating in Kerala, some parts of Maharashtra, which needs to be seen in detail. That is second thing. And third thing about school, we should remember in Kerala, it's only 10th and 12th standard classes has been started.
Right.
Still the case are going on. So it is also, it says that if you open up lower classes, the spread may be more.
Also, Dr. Ganga Khedkar, there is vaccine hesitation that we have reported extensively as well. What do you think in terms of solution? I would give the last word to Dr. Raman Ganga Khedkar. A lot of people are saying, well, at some point herd immunity will set in, etc. What is your take on the way forward?
I think people who believe in herd immunity need to reflect a little better. We may perhaps not have herd immunity as we by and large tend to believe. It's like a wish listing that you would have. What is key as important issue that I will tell you? One, vaccination must become a strong effort for the healthcare workers and frontline workers, as well as those who are older, belonging to older population, at least in these particular districts. to reduce the impact. Second thing which we have to remember
Okay.
is we should not look at some areas like genomic surveillance as one of the answers. When we are not following COVID appropriate behavior, why blame the virus? No, what is in our hand, we need to undertake that part. The third thing which I would say is, we are lifting lockdowns, but we are lifting lockdowns as if first of a particular month is a sacrosanct day and we lift everything. No, it should not happen. When you lift a lockdown, you must have surveillance in place for those places. Let's say, like, I am going to open up the schools. I need to look at, there is heterogeneity
Yes.
in the outbreak in different districts.
Right.
I need to look at each district and see what is the infection rates that I am observing even in the school children, and take decentralized decisions rather than a centralized
Right.
approach which tends to say that on an X
Absolutely.
date everything
I
is
think
going
that's a
good.
great note to end this discussion. It cannot be one size fits all. It cannot be a homogeneous strategy. It has to be done at a very local level. And therefore, this kind of a blanket unlocking also it doesn't seem to be working in at least these two states. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Joshi, Dr. Padmanabha Shenoy, Dr. Raman Gangakhetkar. I appreciate your joining us this evening.